a state, and a nation. These two ideas have very different meaning, but they are often confused, perhaps not by accident. Political elites love to wrap themselves in a national flag. Patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel, Samuel Johnson said, and he had a point. Who is going to throw a rock at a thief or a fool draped in national colors head to toe? Not a true patriot. The elite's work is easier and safer if ideas like government or state are discreetly fixed to some well-respected notion and then nailed together to the handle of a national flag. For example, freedom. Like a bell in Pavlov's experiment, the mere sound of the word provokes an immediate reaction. Only instead of saliva dripping from the dog's mouth, citizens happily produce cash and send their children off to grounds of mass killing. Easy. This conditional reflex is the core curriculum of the kindergarten of political manipulation. Freedom, money. Freedom, volunteers. But this is just the beginning. People want freedom. Very well. But how to put this noble desire to good use? For a political class to benefit, freedom must be firmly attached to something solid, something that won't slip out of your hands like an eel. Land. There's nothing better and more reliable than land. However, how to weld freedom, the abstract idea, to a material object like a piece of land? Like uniting a soul with a body, this operation requires almost divine skills. Perhaps it was not that hard in the old times when every bread eater was somehow dependent on scratching dirt. But now, when hardly anyone keeps petunias on the balcony? Perhaps black magic could help. Well, let's give it a try. A nation must own a certain piece of landscape because... that's just too complicated for you. The National Guardians choke with irritation. No wonder. Lands sometimes change hands, and despite that, nations survive just fine. Poland, for example, Lviv was in. Now it's out. Wrocław was out. Now it's in. Meanwhile, the Polish nation, thank you very much, looks like it's getting stronger. Do not overcomplicate. Hip hip hooray! Freedom, freedom! And how about history and culture? Important, of course. However comes about because of that nasty feature that conceptual entities have. Abstracts live in a human memory, books, pictures, and these, unlike terra firma, move with people very easily. And people, unfortunately, they just are becoming more and more mobile. As a matter of fact, to be carriers of the national sentiments, culture and history are utterly useless from the elite's point of view. Because how are the mentioned elites supposed to prosper if commoners drag their sorry butts wherever they please? Like milk cows without fences. Today they are home, paying taxes as they should, and tomorrow somewhere else, fattening another government. Frustrations of Edward, the King of England, concerning the American Revolution are coming back to Europe like a bad dream. Screw the culture, the enraged authorities roar. They must love the land. The land can be trusted. It will never move. The only problem is, who needs land now, except for farmers and miners? And as people's dependence on the land weakens? Never. We will never let that happen. They must love the land. Doctors, informatics, plumbers, and welders crisscross the continents in pursuit of their personal freedom, paying hardly any attention to borders. The nomads of the 21st century can reject all political elites, and do so without sacrificing even a crumb of their national culture, carried in their hearts and laptops. The gates of Europe are thrown wide open, and herds of citizens are slipping out of the frustrated elite's grip. The exhausted shepherds are trying to hold them back, But the state propaganda has been losing its potency, except for soccer matches and Olympic Games. To have a closer look at this phenomenon, let us follow the case of Poland, a country undergoing transformation faster than any other European state. When the Western Slavs settled between the rivers of Bug and Oder is not quite clear. Rather easygoing, they did not instigate too much trouble in the neighborhood, so not many reports reached Roman archives to be discovered now. If there was anything remarkable about them, it was perhaps the lack of cruelty. Like their contemporaries, Slavs expected their prisoners of war to be ransomed. But with the money not coming, the prisoner could buy himself out for 20 years of service. After that, he was granted freedom, could go wherever he wished. But after 20 years, where could he go? And on top of that, as a free man, he could marry. So he often stayed as a Pole. In the times of mass impalements, this generosity was unusual enough to be recorded in chronicles. The year 966 AD, when the country accepted Christianity, is the first date firmly fixing Poland in the troublesome neighborhood between Russia and Germany, two big predators of Europe. The next 1,000 years or so passed as one might expect. Poles sometimes fought Russians, sometimes Germans, and in some unfortunate cases, both at the same time. In effect, the easygoing Poles acquired some aggressive features. A certain tendency to poke a finger into the eye of one or the other beast, as she was pushing her greedy snout across the border. During the past 300 years, except for the last half-century, no generation of Poles escaped a great bloodletting. Every 20 to 30 years, Poles felt the irresistible desire to make another insurrection, one more uprising or revolution, sacrificing their best children in a bloody rite. Every decent Pole wanted his place in history. While other Europeans were developing commercial markets, colonizing continents, or undertaking other profitable activities, no scrap of land was considered unworthy of a heroic death. But at the end of the 20th century, a miracle happened. Germans discovered a pleasant and agreeable aspect of their personality, and the Soviet Union, the Frankenstein of Russian origin, impotently fell apart. Poland returned to the European community, and the need for compulsive jabbing at the neighborhood robbers practically disappeared. Within 25 years, Poland's national product more than doubled, and the speed with which Polish landscape changed amazed Europe. The ugly duckling transformed into a beautiful swan in one short season. The percentage of Poles working the soil fell from 60% right after the Second World War to 13% in the year 2013. Agriculture's share in the national product fell even more, to 4%. Without a doubt, the Poles' relationship with the land changed in a dramatic way. How did it impact the centuries-long Polish nationalism and perception of freedom? The Poles asking about the willingness to sacrifice for the country had shaken the nation's elders to the core. Where boys always grew up to be enthusiastic martyrs for the national cause, barely 43% of contemporary Poles declared readiness for the supreme sacrifice. The traditional cry, "God, honor, and fatherland," was apparently replaced by the more moderate motto of wife, children, and decent life. The suspicion of treason fell upon the young generation. Instead of waiting impatiently for a heroic death, they took to teaching their kid how to ride a bike and spent time blowing bubbles in the park. To the patriarch's horror, they started behaving like the rest of young European degenerates, for whom state frontiers started having significance of a purely historic nature. Out of simple minds came simple solutions. This new national disease must be treated with lessons of patriotism, demanded the Knights of Respublica, intoning the ancient battle hymn. Between the lines, if necessary at the cost of math and English. We need patriots, not smartasses. Meanwhile, 2 million of Poles left the country since 2007, when Poland joined the visa-free Schengen area. Mostly young, often well-educated, those Poles went to realize their right for pursuit of personal freedom. Some jaded compatriots accused them of selling out in order to do menial jobs. But those who were janitors abroad probably would work in the same line of work at home. Those who learned a useful skill and took the trouble to master a foreign language worked in their own professions. In old Europe or the New World, they live and work wherever they are happy, watch Polish TV programs, and meet Polish friends just like home. The culture shock they had been threatened with just did not happen. Like English, Spanish, and other immigrants before them, Poles discovered that the dirt in England or Texas is no different than the soil at home. As though Chopin, Milosz, and Gombrowicz were not enough, they proved once more that national identity and culture are transplantable. Gifted and hardworking, international Poles increase the reach and depth of their national heritage, something that not always can be said about their compatriots back home. The traditional elites trying to weld the idea of freedom to the ancestral land have lost the first round. Additional lessons in patriotism are not going to help because the connection between the land and the Polish identity has weakened. More and more Poles understand that nation means much more than state. Young Poles are not losing their national identity, not at all, but, quite correctly, they have learned to associate it with Polish culture and history. And these abstract entities live in human memory, on pages of books and lines in computer code. The land, it plays little role in their national awareness. And the state, it's good if the state is not embarrassing them. They can be Poles wherever life takes them, no permission required. National communities, Polish among them, are slowly detaching themselves from the earthly crust, their links to state structures weakening. Like immaterial clouds of cultural values, likes and dislikes, even the sense of humor, these puffs of kinship drift over administrative borders. Created by the centuries of common history, they never stop changing, sometimes feathery, sometimes dense. They can be seen, but no one can trap them. Yet, even being ephemeral forms, they greatly influence the lands beneath. For centuries, immigrants bundled their national spirit into meager belongings as they went to settle new communities, often better and richer. These relocations did not harm their national culture. To the contrary, it strengthened its global position. Today, this process of national drifting has accelerated like an avalanche. The Polish elites must understand that their compatriots can leave. Many will leave, but also that they can return, enriched by their foreign experience, bringing with them new insights and novel ways of thinking.
In fact, there is a lack, a niche for innovative, hungry for success, entrepreneurial platform, and YouTube, I believe, is the kind of product. So we produce videos and then we distribute them and we make them available for the professional community of professionals worldwide. Currently it's 180 countries, it's 13.5 thousand videos, it's 200,000 visits, unique visits per month. We have partners in Hong Kong, in Melbourne, in Toronto, in Salt Lake City, in Berlin, Milan, Göteborg, Sweden, virtually everywhere in the world, including Africa, of course.
A nation is the outcome of a daily plebiscite of folks who decide if they wish to be a part of it, said Ernest Renan 200 years ago. And it's even truer in the 21st century. Any government's cardinal task is to create such conditions that will attract creative people to its jurisdiction. The art of good governance depends on the ability to align inhabitants' desires with their needs of state. Flag-waving and patriotic chanting composed for 1 million voices do not attract people who are most useful in the creation of a competitive economy and culture. A rich crop of young, ambitious Poles grew up like a fresh crown of a tree after a long winter.
I'm a student of aeronautics. I'm an engineer. Yes, I want to make a drone which is maximum stabilized I want to put some cameras. This is my goal. And I raised some money too. Not so much, it was about 1,500 zloty. I could say it was a kick for me. I found some sponsors and investors in Wrocław. I want to make my own business. It is my goal, and I want to be dependent only on myself. I have nothing to lose. If something goes wrong, I can always work for them, but my target is my own firm. I'm not afraid. I know what is my value, and I must find a way to make my dreams come true.
Educated, enterprising, and creative, these young men and women look around the world, even if they would rather land on the home airstrip. Their decisions will not be automatic. Tempted with high incomes, prestigious positions, and well-equipped labs abroad, these young Poles are holding all the good cards in the game of population poker. They demand respect, a reasonable tax system, and opportunities to develop their careers. The mystique appeals for love of the ancestral land, tribal scuffles, and nights filled with the light of flares attract different human types. Not so useful in the creating of cutting-edge technology. No one can order this promise of modern Poland and tell them where to work. They must be seduced. Some of them are still home. Others are already conquering new lands. The same approach can be used to catch all of these birds. It's hardly a secret trick. But the political leaders must come up with something better than this. For the most talented young Poles, state borders have already ceased to exist. Sometimes they will live in the old country, sometimes outside. But as long as they keep their national identity, they can be Poland's great asset regardless of their place of residence. The political elites should polish their shoes, suck in their guts, and take lessons in the art of seduction to sweep this class of mobile Poles off their feet. No nation can afford the loss of its most ambitious and capable people and stay in the global race. The leaders who command their troops through blind, automatic patriotism, like Pavlov's dog, must remember that the last victorious peasant charge took place under Wrocławice well over 200 years ago. In the 21st century, the country based on tribal emotions may easily degenerate into a nationalistic backwoods, a place treated with sentiment, good for a trip with kids. But an ambitious life cannot happen in a Skansen park. The creative, modern people require a social environment and a physical infrastructure to match their aspirations. The Polish government's task is to make it possible for them to find such a place between bug and odor.